Greetings, America. It's been a day or two since I posted a video. I've got at least one or two videos um, in storage that I haven't done any kind of editing to, let alone post them. But it is what it is. As many of you have reached the ripe age of adulthood, stuff happens, life happens, and it just is what it is. Um, the whole premises for this little vlog or whatever you want to call it was a form of catharsis for me, an opportunity to, share my thoughts and vent, but also take stock and accountability for what I'm doing since I'm putting it on the internet and recognizing that not everybody thinks the same or feels the same, but to not devalue or dehumanize them. So I will admit that has been a bit of a struggle. To include, I've tried to encourage others to talk, and to some small degree, I have. However, not always in a public forum as far as responding in comments or responding in video form, but at least some people in my relatively close inner circle have taken an opportunity to watch my rants, as they've been called. So that's cool. With that being said, what's happened since I last posted a video? Well, I suppose quite a bit. Depending on what circles you run in, and whether you're on social media in any way, shape, or form, and you pay attention to anything, apparently the critical race theory is getting some backlash, which may be well deserved. LeBron James is out of the playoffs, which I only find ironic because since he took to social media to openly criticize law enforcement and, make comments about the status of America, this, that, or the other, and this is a man who's wanted for nothing since he graduated high school, and probably wanted for nothing while he was in high school, and was a heavily recruited star in high school. I think in his defense, it would have been epic if he made all of these comments and all these suggestions or whatever he did, and then went to the NBA finals and won, but like was the star of the show. In his defense, I think that would have backed it up. But now for all the naysayers, myself included, it's just kind of like, oh well, easy to say when you're not a winner, or whatever the case may be. So that was interesting. Let's see what else has been going on. I'm trying to think here. I put my own self on the spot and I can't come up with anything. Um, Not really sure. Uh, Obviously not my best start to a video. Um, my kids have finished school. My youngest turned 13. Saturday, my oldest will turn 16. And then next month on the 24th, my middle child would have been 14, and had everything been normal, he would be going into his freshman year. So instead, I'm about to have a junior in high school and an eighth grader. So that's pretty interesting. Um, I took my youngest, my son, to Twin Peaks for his 13th birthday. A little bit of tongue in cheek, a little bit of a, a gag, hey, welcome to being a young man, here's some pretty girls to look at, etc. You know, slightly above that of a nudie bar, right? So normally the girls at Twin Peaks wear these like little flannel shirts with the push-up bras and everything, and these little short khaki shorts, and that's what I was anticipating. I got there on Friday with my son, and the girls are all in black lingerie, black bras, black leggings, and black panties. Um, it was a bit more than what I anticipated. And while I'm sure the scenery was no doubt enjoyable, I'm one of those unique individuals where it's hard for me to enjoy because I'm twice their age, or I'm assuming I'm twice their age. There's no way any of those girls were in their 30s, let alone 40s. And nothing against women of that age. That's my age bracket. But I had to keep in the back of my mind every time I wanted to take a look at one of those women that I could potentially be looking at my daughter. And that was disturbing. And, if nothing else, it's like, yeah, congratulations. You're old now. All right. You look at a 20 something year old like, damn, look at that. She is put together well. And it's like, she's old enough to be your daughter. You could be literally making that comment about your daughter. And it's like, ugh. Oh, yeah. Um, this year will be the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So there's that to contemplate, right? I only thought about it because one of my cousins in February turned 21 because he was born in February of 2000. So this millennium is now old enough to drink. For some of us, that's kind of an interesting thing. But back to the kids. My wife has been subbing extensively uh, for special needs kids, and we often talk about her day at work. And we often remind ourselves that we also used to have a special needs child, and we always kind of do a bit of a compare and contrast because no two kids are necessarily the same, and each parent is a little bit different in their approach. So, it's been unique. And, some of the things we talk about are like how many of these parents are using school as a daycare center, and does that technically make them a bad person? Because, what is the truth? The truth is electricity is not free. Water is not free. A roof over your head is not free. I mean, it seems kind of obvious and a little oxymoronic, like, well, duh, but that's the 100% truth, is you have to earn money to pay for your electric bill. You have to earn money to pay for your water bill. Hell, you even have to earn money to pay for the garbage. You have to earn money to put a roof over your head. So, some of these parents who may or may not be using the school as a form of daycare, it's because they probably have to work just to keep food on the table, to keep a roof over their head, stay dry when it's wet, stay warm when it's cold, have flushable running water, have electricity, so the lights are on, the basic necessities. So, it's kind of fun to have these conversations because on one hand, the educational side of my wife's work, she'll consistently be like, "Oh God, do these parents really care? Are they really interested? Are they truly concerned with their child's well-being and their educational growth and et cetera, so on and so forth? Or is it literally just a daycare because they need someone to watch over their kid?" And in either case, you can fall on two sides of that coin. Well, so what if they're using it as a daycare? The school itself is supposed to be reputable. The school itself is supposed to be safe where you can send your kids. And then it's funny how one conversation can spiral or it can domino into something else, right? So then you start thinking about your own livelihood, and then you start comparing and contrasting it to your own kids. And then, for me being in the military, I start looking at the kids in the military. And it's just so interesting. And I think I may have talked about it once before. And I apologize if this is redundant, but it got me thinking about stuff like, well, good, bad, or indifferent. When I was growing up, you know, off and on, I had a single mom, at least until I was 8 years old. She married my stepdad, and for all intents and purposes, he was the only father figure I had ever since I was 8 years old, up until his death in May of 17. Um, that being said, I did go to daycare for a little bit after school. After my mom and my stepdad got married, I became a latchkey kid. Now, I apologize for those of you who may not be familiar with the term latchkey. At 8 years old, I had a key to the apartment. I got off the bus, I went home to an empty house where nobody was home. All I had to do was call my mom and check in with her at work and say, hey, I'm home, I'm safe, we're good to go. And I did that consistently for, to be honest, I don't remember when I stopped calling her. But from third grade, yeah, third grade, all throughout high school, I no longer went to daycare. I no longer did anything of that such. To include, I used to go to summer camp after first grade, second grade, and third grade. And then after third grade, I no longer went to summer camp, which was basically another form of daycare for kids who had working parents and whatnot. So after the summer, after fourth grade, I finally got to stay home with the rest of my friends, and that was fun. I got to go do things with them. And what I'm attempting to say is we obviously lived in a different world because both of my parents were working. None of my parents were home watching talk television, hearing about these micro horror stories, in middle of America. And I've mentioned this numerous times. These micro horror stories, when they're brought to talk television, like the Oprah and the Ricky Lake and the Sally Jesse Raphael and the Phil Donahue and all that, what it does is it takes a very micro problem or a micro issue and it blows it up into a macro issue where it makes you feel like it's happening everywhere to include your backyard. That wasn't my childhood growing up. Now, I look at my sisters. One was born in 88, one was born in 91, and I look at my niece. She was born in 1990. I'm almost positive their livelihoods and their childhoods were impacted heavily. I don't think my sisters were allowed to go anywhere my parents could not see them. And I often wonder what that does, to stifle their growth, to stifle their independence. Even my kids, as much as I'm somewhat ashamed to admit it, I take few and fewer risks with my kids, and yet I'm always constantly thinking back to when I was their age, what were my limitations? What had I already done, or what was I actively doing at their age? And I know for having a soon-to-be 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, it was not uncommon whatsoever to get on my bike and to ride over to, I don't know, like a 7-Eleven or, whatever the Handy Mart is, or McDonald's, or whatever the case may be, and, or ride to a friend's house. I got a 13-year-old son who has two friends that are in our neighborhood, which I wish I can express and, kind of build a mental picture on what that means. But he's got two friends in the neighborhood. One of them's not allowed to cross a street. And I'm just trying to, I wish I could build that mental picture, but one of his friends is not allowed to come over to the house because his parents are afraid to let him cross a certain street. It's not like crossing a 4 to 6 lane freeway. It's a 2-lane road. Is it busy? Yeah, it's busy. Is it nonstop busy? Are there street lights? No, there's not. But it's just one of those situations. And then he's got another friend who, due to his internal family situation, he's not always available, not always around. So most of my son's friends, if you will, are online in the virtual world where he plays video games. My daughter, funny enough, I tried to express to her, the people and the people you're friendly with now in junior high, or what they call middle school, be prepared and expect changes. All right, don't expect them to be the same as they were in middle school. Be prepared to make new friends. Be prepared to meet new people who more align with who you are as a person. And what blows my mind, and this is not picking on my daughter in any way, shape, or form, what blows my mind is I don't think she understood the change. She disliked the change, but she didn't seem terribly interested in making new friends. And now she has this opportunity to go to school 100% online where she doesn't have to mix or mingle with live people. And oftentimes I'm curious as to, what that's going to do to her individual growth, because at some point in time, she's going to want to go to college, or she's going to have to leave the house and she's going to have to do something. And, can she integrate into society? If she keeps hiding in these virtual worlds. I'm well aware she could go to college 100% online, but, I did that out of necessity. Someone of her age, when she graduates high school, I don't know if online college is necessarily the best thing for personal growth, but, I say all these things because I welcome feedback. I welcome discord, the conversation. And I often wonder about these things, when I talk to my wife and we talk about how the schools have tried to integrate, kids with special needs. Special needs has kind of evolved in some good directions and some bad directions. When I was growing up, we used to have kids that had behavioral disorders, whether it was autism, whether it was anything for that, anything. All right, kids that had legit behavioral disorders who could not deal with or could not thrive in a traditional classroom, they were separated and they were segregated for everybody's sake, for their own sake, and for the sake of other students who, could handle themselves in a normal classroom. Kids that didn't have triggers. Now, I'm very happy that we have evolved as a society to accept certain conditions like autism. Now it's not like, oh my God. And I do remember growing up, I do remember, you know, the awkwardness for people who had rare, emotional, psychological conditions, um, and the awkwardness of how it was dealt with. So I can appreciate the more societal acceptance of these things. However, I don't always know that they're handled as well as they should be. All right. And, when I listen to some of the stories my wife brings home, I often wonder, if everything's being dealt with as appropriately. And then that's where that whole domino effect begins. Has everything been handled appropriately? Have we as parents, and I mean parents on a larger scale, have we been dealing with our kids appropriately? Have we digressed into a population of parents that want to be friends and want the undying love of our children? Or can we still muster the courage and the strength to be like our parents and honestly not give a damn about whether our kids like us or not give a damn about whether our kids love us or not, but take responsibility for trying to make a law-abiding, productive member of society, or at least do our best. Whether our kids do that or not, you know, and that goes back to some of those other conversations. Did Jeffrey Dahmer's parents, do their absolute best to raise a good person, and Jeffrey Dahmer was just Jeffrey Dahmer, you know? Or are we a generation of parents that are so afraid that, based on all the psychobabble and talk shows and books, that there was something we could have done to prevent our kids from being Jeffrey Dahmer or from being the Columbine shooters or whatnot? And I think the God's honest truth is you can do your best, but they're still individual human beings who are going to make their own choices and do what they're going to do. And it just, at the end of the day, it is what it is. Uh, but, I'm curious to know what you think. One of the biggest struggles I've had lately is with the new socio-political world, whether it's critical race theory, whether it's BLM, whether it's Antifa, whether it's, this whole white guilt. People want to call it reverse racism, but racism is racism is racism. So white shaming and white guilt and all of that stuff. I have two kids that are white, and it's not their fault. It's just who it is. So, all these questions flood my brain because, I'm the father of two children that I got to put out in the real world. And I wonder how long this roller coaster is gonna, this roller coaster ride's gonna last with all of this white shaming and, what's the latest thing? The Asian hate. And I question who's doing the Asian hate. We just got done watching that Jupiter's Legacy over the weekend because, it's like, what, 8 episodes? and the character of Josh Duhamel, Utopian, is talking about Nazis in the streets, and I'm trying to wrap my head around what is he actually saying. Is the writers actually trying to imply that there's legit Nazis of the 30s and 40s in American streets walking the streets with the Nazi ideology? And these are the things that concern me with my kids. Like, what kind of world are they going to enter into, because of who I am as a person, and my influence on them, good, bad, or indifferent. So I could go on, but I won't. I'm going to cut this one short, because if anybody does want to watch this, and if anybody does want to comment, I'd like to hear your opinions. All right. So with that being said, let's get these conversations started. Don't forget, hit like if you like the video, subscribe if you want, hit the notification bell. But in spite of all that, let's at least try to have these conversations about anything and everything. That's all I got.